You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. The cornerstone of being a Rebelpreneur is choosing the unconventional path. And what I'm trying to tell you is you have to break the rules. And I don't mean that you have to do anything illegal, immoral, or unethical to be successful. But if you do what everybody else does, you're going to get what everybody else gets. And that usually means you're going to be mediocre and vanilla. You're not going to stand out. You're not going to have market domination. So as Rebelpreneurs, how do we package and position ourselves in a way that is unconventional and that still gets us the success that we want, but in ways perhaps that we couldn't plan on in advance, because who can? Today's guest is someone who is a really good example of choosing the unconventional path and being wildly successful in the process. I am pleased to welcome Julia Lemberskiy. She is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and startup executive with over 10 years experience launching and leading business lines at companies like Uber and Rocket Internet. She is the co-founder of JJ Studio, and she has helped dozens of hypergrowth startups scale their operations and growth channels. And most recently, she joined the venture capital firm Frontier Ventures. Julia, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your story. How in the world did you go from the unconventional path up to this place of success as an entrepreneur and now as an investor and venture capital partner? How did you get there? Tell us your story.
I wish I could tell you a linear path that was long planned out and advanced in a way that I meticulously had planned out back in my teenage years, but it certainly was not this way. I guess like a lot of people, I stumbled my way up and sometimes down and then back up again through my entrepreneurial and also investor journey. To take you back, I guess, to my childhood, I was brought in a now what I understand to be a breeding ground for entrepreneurship. So I was actually, raised in the post-Soviet Union Russia, where it was, big greenfield opportunity. The planned economy collapsed. Now it's all up to the private individuals to figure out ways to, create means of production, to set up companies, etc. And so just growing up, even, age 5, 6, 7, etc., I just saw people all around me hustling towards becoming entrepreneurs. And even so in my family, I was raised by a single mom and my grandma, seeing them figuring out little businesses here and there to make ends meet. For example, like after my grandma would pick me up from kindergarten, rather than, taking me home and cooking me dinner or whatever, we would go to the market and I would stand there as a 5-year-old selling hats that she sewed or just doing business, selling things from a very, very tender age. So that's kind of the earliest journey. And during my teens, but then again, I thought I might want to do something like business. I had no idea really what it means. I thought you need to buy a suit and then go do something and talk to a lot of people, but I had no idea what it means to be an entrepreneur or to do business. But then luckily when I was 15, some books kind of fell into my hands through some friends, one of them being Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I guess some of these, now considered classics when it comes to entrepreneurial mindset. And that really then kickstarted me on this journey from age 15 on to, design my career on a more unconventional path. So already at that age, I became a bit of a rebel. I told my parents I would not want to go to college. As I was finishing up high school, I instead, set up my first little startup ventures here and there and did some internships at some companies and just felt like, I just want to be my own boss and don't really need to get a formal education to do so. My parents were not too excited. So I did end up getting some degrees, mostly so, they don't completely give up on me. And so ended up, doing a master's and a bachelor's. But again, I had opportunities to go to really good schools. I was interviewing with Oxford. I had some scholarships at Northeastern, etc. But I decided rather to go to a super small, no-name college because it allowed me to be super entrepreneurial at the same time. Like, for example, I wouldn't need to go to classes. I could just sit the exams because I felt that I could teach all these things to myself a little more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of a very unconventional path of how I hacked my academic career, and I got my bachelor's in 2 years, et cetera, et cetera. And fast forward, I guess, to the last couple of years. Again, I think the most important part of being an entrepreneur is just to see and explore and say yes to as many opportunities as possible. And so really, if you just look at, different things I've been doing over the last years, like, working for Uber, launching, multiple of new ventures for them across the world, working for some other large tech companies, doing these different investments that I've done as an angel, etc. It all came about from, being always on and always looking for opportunities that I can explore, and then always saying yes and trying to do things, again, not in an unusual path. I bounced around a lot with different countries, different companies. So my resume looks a little hacked together from so many different things, but ultimately it got me to where I am today. And very excited to be where I am today.
You make a really good point, Julia, that success is not always in a straight line. It's not the straight path from point A to point B. And as a result, entrepreneurs and self-made people, they can have an erratic background. They can have a resume that seems like it's all over the place. It makes sense to you, but to people who don't understand, trying to figure it out from the outside looking in, it looks kind of chaotic. But these experiences become the basis of who you are. It's the way you look at life, the way you look at business. Obviously, it is working for you. When you started JJ Studio, you're the co-founder of JJ Studio, and you have helped dozens of hypergrowth startups scale 10x or more. What was the biggest challenge you faced as a new business owner, and how did you overcome it?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think being an entrepreneur has many good things that has come with it. I think the worst part of it is the loneliness. Like when you are the founder, and oftentimes when you just start up a new thing, it's just you in the business. It's really hard if you can't, run things by someone else to get a sanity check, or, just to kind of get direction from someone. Especially when I started JJ Studio, I had just come out of 4 years of being employed for a corporation, for Uber and some other companies. So it was a big pivot for me from, having this entire, corporate structure, I guess, to then becoming self-employed once again. So figuring out, how do I structure my day if I don't have somebody else, looking over my shoulder, so to speak? How do I stay organized? How do I stay motivated? And how do I make up for those long stretches of times where I wouldn't really communicate with anyone? I mean, of course, I would communicate with my clients, but it's very different type of communication than with a colleague. And so this loneliness of like not having like friends at work, or even that the structure that having like a boss or something gives you, that was a really hard one to overcome. I guess the best way, what ended up working for me is I actually partnered with Janita Hollingshead, who's now my co-founder, who has a very similar background to mine, also very rebellious in many ways. And so we partnered now to co-lead JJ Studio together, and then also we've established a team of now 12 people. So over time, by building out our founders team and then our core team, some of these kind of loneliness questions went away. The other thing that really helped me through this phase is being very, very mindful of like why I'm doing this. Oftentimes when things get tough, when you start your own company, be it due to loneliness or just, whatever other million things can go wrong, it's sometimes pretty easy to give up if you don't have a very, very clear why or very clear kind of values that you're following. So one of the first things that Janice and I did when we, embarked on this journey is we went up a couple of days and we just kind of, locked ourselves in a meeting room and said, okay, we're not coming out of here until we have a really, really clear answer to the question, why are we doing this? And something that we actually recorded a video of ourselves talking about all our motivations and our values. And so whenever things get tough now and get lonely and all these things happen, I just go back to this video and I look at it and I get reminded, why I'm on this journey.
That's a really good idea. Recording yourself at your peak moment, maybe explaining your purpose, your vision, your values, your goals, what is your why, but recording that, videotaping that or recording that on audio. And then when you get to those moments where there's some confusion or doubt or loneliness, or you just need better clarity for whatever reason, you plug in and you go back to that time and you see yourself. And I think that I kind of use that technique myself. I think it's rather motivating and encouraging to hear it coming out of your own mouth in your own words. And it helps you to reconnect to that vision and that motivation, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll add to that. This video in particular became an amazing recruiting engine for us because, it's really us from our heart speaking, like, why are we doing this? Who are we? What are our values? And so all of our core employees that joined us over this past, year and a half since we started this company, they were attracted mostly due to this video because they felt like we shared the same values, the same goals. So this was a huge learning for us as well.
In terms of the global pandemic, I'm asking people, how has that affected your life? How has it affected your business? I know that you are well-traveled in over 70 countries, and you've got business concerns all over the world. How has the pandemic affected your outlook, your paradigm on life, on business, on a global scale?
Significantly, I would say, if I have to use one word. There's definitely been a lot of learnings for me. So I mentioned earlier that I was coming out of this longer stint in larger companies. And for this whole time, even though I really enjoyed myself and my career, I did get sucked into corporate life a little bit and the comfortable benefits packages and travel miles and all the goodies that come with it. So, but there was this voice in my head that kept saying hey, weren't you doing this thing to start your own company? Wasn't that the goal the whole time? And so during the pandemic, this voice definitely got much louder. I was able to go inwards and reflect much more. And then on top of that, actually, my position was affected by the pandemic in terms of a mass layoff that Uber had back in May last year, or a year ago now at this point. So I was freed in a way from all of these comfortable corporate kind of life benefits and situations, and was out there, during the pandemic trying to figure out what's next step for me. And that's when that voice got really, really loud, and I decided to jump back into entrepreneurship, which I hadn't done in quite a few years. Beyond that, I would just say that, I finally had time for a lot of personal projects, from getting married to buying and renovating the house to doing so many other things that, due to just having a busy career and bouncing all around the world, they came up short. So even though the pandemic did also touch me and my family in some negative ways, I am grateful for some of these opportunities, to also focus on my personal life a bit more during this time.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And that's a great way of using what can be a negative, it is a negative event depending on how it affects you, but being able to respond to that as a catalyst for taking your game of life and your game of business to a much deeper and higher dimension. You've worked with so many companies and so many brands to help them to grow. And as a venture capitalist, you're also looking at startup companies to see which ones should get money, to help them to grow. What would you say is the biggest challenge or the biggest problem you see with companies that are in that startup mode or they're trying to get to the next level? What do you think is the biggest obstacle that they face?
So I think a lot of startups, they face inwards too much and too early on and for too long. What I mean by that is, someone might have a spark of a great idea while working somewhere. They go out and decide to found this company around it. And then typically, in a way, they lock themselves in their garage or office or whatever it is, and just, build that product that they're proud of, and, build a team around it, and, do all of this work fairly separated from, how the world is continuing to evolve around them, and it's evolving faster and faster. And so too many times do I see companies that, spend too long building and not enough time, exploring key strategic relationships, speaking with potential customers. And then also oftentimes it means that they don't have a lot of understanding of what the market looks like from a competitor standpoint, for example. So as a VC right now, I'm seeing, hundreds of pitch decks every week, and I'm oftentimes very disappointed in how the competitive landscape slide looks like. Most companies, they really underestimate how much is already going on. There's a lot of, entrepreneurial brain power happening right now in the world. A lot of people have seized the pandemic to start their own companies, to gain funding. And so it's really important to understand what is your market for your competitors, because VCs will know it, because we see thousands of decks a month. We will see probably if there is some hot industry that truly has, a need and a product that's, worthwhile exploring, we will see dozens of decks solving the same problem. And so if a company underestimates and says, oh, we're the only ones, that's a very key mistake that I see over and over again.
Wow. That little bit of advice you just gave could be a multi-million-dollar solution for a company to get the funding that they need if they just take what you just said. And I guess that applies for any entrepreneur, whether you're trying to get venture capital or whether you're just trying to build your side hustle or your small business or your professional service or practice. You have to understand the market. You have to understand your competition. That's where the strategy is. It's how you respond to what's going on around you. And like Julia's saying, if you're too focused inwards for too long, you kind of get in this, like the bat cave. You never go out and connect with people in Gotham. You don't know what the problems are. You don't know what the challenges are. And by the time you build your thing in the bat cave and come out, the market could have moved down the road 2 or 3 years ago and you missed it, right? Because you're not paying attention.
Absolutely. And I completely empathize with entrepreneurs for why they don't do it and why they look inward so much, because you're so proud of this baby you're building. You're so excited about it. What if you do some in-depth market research and you find a competitor that's super well funded? It's too painful oftentimes to do this research. And so oftentimes entrepreneurs will put on blinders and ignore some of these things. But again, the VCs will know of it. And so if you misrepresent or if you just don't know yourself, and again, I've been in so many of these pitches where, founders told me or just didn't know of certain competitors and I knew, that's typically pretty much leads to an elimination right away. So it's really critical, even though it's painful to know what others are doing, even though it's painful to go out to prospective clients before you have a fully fledged out product. All these things are scary, but they are absolutely crucial.
Yeah. Well, even Swinza said that to know the enemy and to know yourself is to win 1,000 battles. But you have to know your competition. You have to know the landscape and who else is doing it. For me, seeing what other people are doing, other brands, other companies are doing in my space, it helps me to see opportunities. I base what I do on what I see other people not doing or doing imperfectly. Audiences that could be reached that they're not reaching, even with the same thing, but here's an audience that they're overlooking. That's an opportunity. But you can't evaluate that effectively if you never get outside of your own idea, your own head, and really see what's going on. So you're in a unique position in that you see hundreds and thousands of these presentations in the course of your work, and you really get a good sense of who the players are, who's doing what, where the opportunities are, and you can look at something and say, that's already been done, or someone else is doing it better than you can. That's not the opportunity. On the other hand, here is an opportunity that no one else is paying attention to. Maybe there is an underserved audience. There probably isn't very many new products. It's just more about packaging, presenting, and reaching a specific segment. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just one thing I would just add to what you just said is, just because I have such a dangerous position of being in venture capital and seeing this opportunity doesn't mean that, only I can be in this position, right? Because these days it's so easy for pretty much anyone to get access to deal flow and have the same level of understanding of different markets. Like anyone can sign up on like Angel List, for example, and follow a bunch of different syndicates and be able to actually explore, what you just said in terms of what are the different competitive market trends, what is emerging, where is the money flowing. So there's one more thing that I would really recommend to your listeners. Kind of become a quasi VC or angel yourself. You don't even need to put any money down. Like you can get access to these things. Another example is I joined a fellowship called On Deck Angels. So they're also, it's a free fellowship. You just donate some money to like a entrepreneur access fund as part of it. But again, here you see hundreds of deals every week. However much time you have to look at deals. And again, any entrepreneur that is looking to raise money at some point, I would just recommend to train up this muscle of looking through as many decks as possible, understanding trends, how things are being represented, and so on.
That's very valuable advice. Julia, what are you working on right now that's got you really excited? You mentioned buying a house and getting married and all kinds of interesting things. What else have you got going on?
Oh, gosh. So again, being an entrepreneur, saying yes to a lot of things. So there's always a lot of things happening simultaneously. And again, one of the things that I am as devastating as the pandemic has been, one of the interesting trends that did emerge from it is this concept of polyworking, which I'm a huge fan of. So I'm seeing more and more people, myself included, embracing multiple career paths simultaneously that previously were considered mutually exclusive. So in my situation right now, I'm still very focused on building out JJ Studio. We just signed a couple of, new exciting clients with, VC backing from, some of the top firms. And we're really seeing both of these new and existing clients, a lot of impact that our work has on them. And so we're also further building out our team to kind of continue this growth in the next year. And on top of that, I had joined, Frontier Ventures. So I'm really leaning into the world of VC very heavily. We're in the process of closing another fund right now. So, and also a couple of deals we're investing in this month. So that's definitely super exciting. But beyond that, I'm again trying to use this, pandemic when things have slowed down a little bit in terms of travel, to learn as much as I can. So I'm right now finishing up my MBA in parallel, doing a couple of other fellowships and courses. And on top of that, as I mentioned before, really prioritizing my personal life. So I'm still fixing up that house that we bought, the fixer-upper in Hudson Valley. Just trying my best to balance all these things as much as possible.
Yeah, I was going to say, you need to really carve out some space for you, some you time, some me time, and make sure that you don't overextend yourself, because you really have a lot going on. And anyway, you already know that you are successfully balancing all of these things, and I'm inspired by you is what I'm getting at, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of everything else you have going on to speak with us today. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I would just say, a lot of entrepreneurs, they ask, what should they learn as important skill sets, et cetera. And I did mention this VC, angle that, if you fall into the category of entrepreneurs that is looking to raise money at some point, definitely invest some time, reading some resources written for VCs that try to think a little bit kind of in their shoes. And there's some good books written on this. And then also, sign up on things like Angel List, On Deck, but something a bit more broad, because I know, of course, VC funding does not apply to all founders. More broadly, I would say sales training, I think, is probably the most effective, specific kind of knowledge base that I see every entrepreneur benefits. And it's something that, most entrepreneurs really struggle with. A lot of people don't like sales. It's really, you have to expose yourself. You get a lot of no's. It's scary. But as an entrepreneur, you need to be really, really good in sales. You will need to be selling to VCs, to, top talent that you want to bring on, to, potential clients, obviously, and so on. So that's just my recommendation. If you are looking for one particular area to start studying up right now, sales would be the one to know.
Very valuable words of advice from Julia Lemberskiy. She is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and startup executive with over 10 years' experience launching and leading business lines at companies like Uber and Rocket Internet. She's the co-founder of JJ Studio, and you can find out more about her and her work at meetjjstudio.com. We'll have that link posted on the Rebelpreneur website as well. Julia, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us on Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.